Hi, this foundational talk is on what I call living on the bell curve. And the bell curve, you may know from math or statistics or something, is a distribution in any population of a particular quality of that population. And for instance, put that in simple terms, you take 100 people and you line them up by body mass index, and the highest to the lowest. And what you get this bell curve. You get a few that are really high, then you get fewer of those, and then you get in the middle, you have where most people are, sort of the average. And then you go down, it goes down to another tail on the other end where it's really low. And you take those same 100 people and you line them up by height, and you get the same bell curve. And then you choose any quality you want to, like a sense of well-being in life or what have you, and you get the same bell curve. So why is this important? There's a researcher by the name of Thomas Kuhn, Kuhn, years ago at Princeton, who was studying how natural sciences changed paradigms, like from Newtonian to Einsteinian physics and to quantum physics and things like that, and and in biology and so on and so forth. So what he found was that there is this bell curve, and how a new idea enters a system. You have a standard system that's fully developed. We kind of understand everything about what's going on. We feel like we've got pretty much everything covered, and we have this broad and deep understanding. Now all of a sudden, we get a new idea comes in, and things begin to change. And we have what's known as the innovators. They're at the very beginning of this curve. And then we have the early adopters. And then we have the mid adopters, and they're the median part of the curve, the highest point of the curve. And then we begin to slope down again to late adopters and to laggards. And the laggards, he said, unlike everyone else on the curve, the laggards will never change. They will resist change tooth and nail, and they are just simply never going to change. So, and what happens is that when a paradigm moves forward, it doesn't sort of slink along toward the innovators and then the rest catches up. Because the laggards simply have to die off. Because they're not going to change. And so when enough of that change has occurred, in other words, there's fewer and fewer laggards left, the entire bell curve jumps forward. So, and now why is that important today? Well, if we take a quick look at the news of any on any day, we will see people who are trying to recreate the past, hold on to the past by whatever means necessary to maintain their position of power and control. This is a common story in today's world. And they're on the laggard side. Now, the innovators are saying, no, we need to do things differently. We got to figure out a better way to live, or else the human race is not going to survive. So we have to figure out different sources of energy. We have to figure out different ways and modes of sustainable agriculture. So the food we have, we're not going to deplete the soils and so on and so forth. So these are the innovators. Organic food, innovation concept 50 years ago, considered to be a crackpot idea. But now it's commonplace because, and all the research behind it shows quite literally that it's essential for our survival in the human race. So, and marketing has used this also. The marketers find the same process in when they want to introduce a new idea into a market. They start this process of innovation, they start picking up early adopters, then it goes on to the mid adopters, and then they have to sort of ease out the old concepts and have a fresh market. So it's at work in our lives, whether we're aware of it or not, whether we recognize it or not. But the reason why it's important here, particularly with the practices of mindfulness and compassion, and when we're talking about how can we live with relative ease and relative sense of well-being in a world that's really just kind of going crazy. There's a lot of problems in worldwide that don't really seem solvable. So how do we deal with that? Well, it's important to know what's going on. The laggards are trying to hold on to power at any cost. And we have innovators saying, no, we can do things differently. Let's do things differently. Let's do things where the greater mass of people are benefited. And the people who want to hold on to power said, no, we can't, we're not going to do that. And so there's this real conflict between authoritarianism and what can be loosely called democracy. That's a whole other discussion, but basically you get the idea. So when we're feeling disoriented, which is not unusual these days, and we're not sure which way to turn, the suggestion is to turn toward the innovators. If you want to really know what's going on, turn toward the innovators, because they're the ones that are really making stuff happen. So that's a brief introduction. I'll go into that more in depth in the talk itself. So I hope that was helpful, and thank you for listening.